Trust is a very tricky topic because on one hand, we have a sense of trust with the world around us, especially with the people that we interact with. We have to trust them because we're dependent on them in many, many different aspects of life. And what this dependence really just comes down to is I have needs and I'm hoping you can fulfill those needs, and you have needs and you're hoping that I can fulfill those needs. And we rely on one another to fulfill each other's needs. Now, I'm very lucky because I get to work with a lot of very trustworthy people. They're not always experienced, and that is often kind of put together, packed up with trust. If somebody's experienced and you can trust that they know what they're talking about, or they know what they're doing, or they have something they can build off of. But often I've worked with very young professionals who may have not had the kinds of experience that a mid-level or a senior level professional might have. And so I trust that in the process of our collaboration, that they're going to gain the necessary skills, they're going to gain the necessary abilities to actually contribute in a significant way to the needs of our mission, to the needs of our work. Now, I also do a lot of teaching, and there's a huge amount of trust that's built into the teaching process, and I think it goes unrecognized. So I trust that my students are putting forth their best effort, that if they come to me and they're asking me questions, or if they need support or they need help, then they've given it their best shot, and that when they come to me, it's because I trust that they actually have a need that they're expressing that I can fulfill. And of course, my students trust me a great deal. They trust me to evaluate their assignments fairly. They trust me to give them information that is credible, that has been validated, that is based on research. And so this kind of bilateral, this two-way flow of trust between people, between an individual and groups, or between groups of people, is really, really important to the way our society is run. And now, the last issue of trust that I think is really critical for us to kind of think about is how trust operates in teams. Now, in one sense, if you have a team that's relatively homogeneous, that's made up of people from very similar backgrounds, very similar life experiences, it can be really easy to establish trust. It can be really easy to establish rapport with each other because you're all working off of a very similar playbook. Now, the challenge with this is that oftentimes homogeneous teams that have people from more or less similar backgrounds, can't really produce innovative ideas because they're not drawing from the broadest possible menu of options when it comes to life experience. So then you're left with this issue of diversity in teams. So now we have a team that's highly diverse. The people within the team are from very, very different backgrounds, and they come from very, very different life experiences. And being able to establish trust and rapport in these teams is absolutely critical, because this is what communication is really founded upon. And so I have to be able to trust the other members of my team, even though I don't know their life experience, even though I may not be familiar with their background. And that way, in that way, I need to make sure that I'm not looking at their contributions as somehow being invalid or not as legitimate as my contributions. We have to look at each other's contributions as being equally valuable. And so establishing trust in these teams can be challenging, but it's a challenge that's well worth tackling. Because once you've established that feeling of interdependence, that collective identity within a team, that makes you unstoppable when it comes to achieving your goals. So as you're working within different groups of people, as you're putting together teams of your own, and you're trying to identify the people who have the best contributions to make, and you're trying to structure a team that brings a variety of perspectives to the work, don't forget that trust is one of the key binding agents for ensuring that that team is successful.